right, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, late morning here. Strap yourselves in. This is going to be a fun ride. Take you through talking about increasing profitability, which you never have enough of it, and everyone needs that. But we're going to talk about it from approaching it more from the cost side of the house. So without further ado, going to get rolling here. All right, just first a couple words about Cloud Age. So Cloud Age, we basically our main goal in life is to really reduce cost and make improve carrier the business and the margins, and so we do that through two broad services. One is data subscription. So we go out and pull data from invoice data, extract it, and provide a normalized feed out to our customers so they consume that. So these are companies that are in the technology expense management space, principally that process invoice data. We do that for them. We sell them a recurring feed on that. And then the second service is what more I'm going to talk about today is around the our product called GPX Cloud, which is a SaaS platform, lifecycle management, built specifically to support the key use cases around connectivity, ranging from network inventory, cost management, invoice processing, validation, analytics, and contract management. All right, going to jump in. So I'm going to share with you some of the typical problems we see in our customers' businesses around cost management. And within this, there's certainly a continuum based on how mature companies are within this service. So we run across companies that are mainly smaller, mid-sized companies that really don't have a lot of development, very immature within the cost management space, and so they typically are better fits for what we're doing to get more value out of it. But as companies grow, their problem, they typically have similar problems, but not is more nuanced, so not necessarily the same degree. But these problems are centered around data, tasks, and best practice. And so within the data area, on the lower end of the, more on the immature end of the spectrum, we find companies that really are processing invoices at more of the face page level, so lack the ability to acquire data and really grab the right data. So as I'll show in some of the other slides, there are certain key data required to do these functions, but what we see, when the data is not there, really you have issues with resource costs and service costs. On the task side, there's a lot to do when you're looking at cost management in terms of auditing and other functions. So lack of automation, really, having manual kind of tasks really drive your resource costs as opposed to your service costs. Another hidden cost too is what I refer to as resource fatigue. So if you have, as your work volume in cost management grows and you're doing things more in a manual nature, it really tends to burn out your people and drives that. So there's also kind of a hidden side of things there. I'm going to move forward. So one of the key, in terms of our point of view, like the key things is really having, driving network, accurate network inventories. The network inventory, in our opinion, is one of the most important aspects of cost management because it represents the buyer's source of truth. And when they receive bills for services they buy, that's really the seller, the vendor's source of truth. And so, buyers really need to have their own set of data. It needs to be, accurate and contain information like, go down the list here, like core information, vendor, the ban, it runs on the actual ID, the circuit ID, the unique ID the vendor uses, so it can be joined up to the spend. Location data, very important. When you start looking at optimizing networks and you start changing facilities, you shut down locations. If you don't have an inventory with that location data, you may overlook that and not disconnect that service. One of the more, probably maybe the most important element of information on an inventory, contracts, rates and dates typically. So, that would drive a use case of like sourcing. So we all know in the space that over time, the cost of telecom services is going down. So if you don't have that key information, like the date of expiration in your inventory, you tend to sit on services way past their expiration date, and that's just a huge opportunity cost. Other information that's really necessary in having a best practice network inventory is configuration data. So understanding the service type, its features, where in the network the routing is set up and all that, because that's going to really help you on your optimization side to really understand kind of how you can maybe hub or do other kind of configuration changes. The service usage, is a good point of information to have as well. Just tells you what you're using the service for. So you might have a host circuit that's tying in NNI, so you know that. So as you get really large inventories, having this type of information is helpful. And then the last thing is really tying your network services to customers, and that comes in really handy when looking at margin analysis, margin analytics. All right, so tell a little story here about a recent customer issue and showing what happens or what can happen when you don't have good inventory data, and then how you can potentially, or how we were able to overcome it by using invoice data, actually. And so this customer didn't have a great network inventory data. They've been with us for a few years. We have a lot of their data in our GPX Cloud platform on the Invoice side. And what we were able to do, because really, we stepped in to try and help them optimize their network costs. And what they really wanted to know, what I really wanted to know in this is, looking at how the network has evolved over the almost 3 years that they've been on our platform. And one way we were able to do that, so really looking at the change in cost, right? And so we were able to write a routine that would take every item on their invoice, and I say item, we refer to it as a SPID, or a service provider ID, circuit ID or whatever, so it denotes the unique service. And so we ran over 35 months of data, and we took basically for each item, we took the cost from the first month it billed, and then we tracked every cost change, whether it went up or down over, if we're on the bill for 35 months, it'd be 35 periods. And so what we found is when we categorized things and we looked at how things changed, whether it increased in cost from the first month, did it not change, and did the cost go down? What we found that there's a significant number of costs that stayed the same, and over that period of time, you would expect those services to be off term, out of contract, so they could be renewed if they're still needed, they could be renewed and cost significantly reduced. And so we ran a secondary set analysis on just the ones that didn't have any change. We found that a significant percent had no change, and they were on the invoice for greater than 30 months. So pretty high probability that those are expired, because the typical term is either 24 or 36 months. And so we surmised that a large portion of this spend is addressable to be sourced, which is huge, so you can go renegotiate and reduce costs. So estimating there probably a $3.4 million annual opportunity on that data. We also looked at some of the services that actually increased in cost and found a large portion of those were due to copper cost increases. And we had this particular network had several DS1 facilities that were first billing like $289, $300, and last billing $3,500, and that was over $1 million in just copper increases alone. And I'm not looking at the clock well enough here, so I'm down to my 10 seconds. But what I want to close with is, as we work with Connectbase, combining the two capabilities of our platforms, we really merge in the quote to cash to the procure to pay process, with Connectbase up on the front end of the process, working on the quoting and all the way through ordering. That, we have API connectivity with Connectbase, pass that over to our platform, our functionality, where it takes it from invoice management, inventory management, through COGS, invoice management and auditing, validation, passing it back to the accounting platform to complete that side of the procure to pay. And then lastly, on the margin management side, so we can take in revenue data and customer inventory data, marry that to our COGS data to give you basically month-over-month margin analytics to kind of close the loop. So with the two solutions integrated together, you get quote to full margin analysis. And that is it, and thank you for your time. And if any of you guys want to continue the conversation, we're right outside in the table out front.
Hey, Chris, before you wrap, what are the biggest questions you feel this audience should be asking that you believe they need to know an answer to today? What do they need to be asking?
Do I have a solid inventory, and am I leveraging that data towards the validation and quantification of our spend? Because the biggest lever I was mentioning is sourcing, and so that's if you really want a quick hitter, if you have a large network that hasn't been fully proactively managed, if you have that data, then you can go into it and really drive some cost. If you don't have that data, you can leverage the cost data to kind of get a proxy, like I explained on that one slide. So.
Okay, and if the people in this room aren't necessarily the right people for you to be talking to, who do they need to go back to at their organization and say, oh my gosh, I heard this genius Chris Lee, and you've got to talk to him? Who do they need to be introducing you to at their company?
Most likely someone in the finance organization or network finance, if they have that type of organization, network planning in some cases, carrier relations sometimes, but anyone that's dealing with the cost of service is kind of who we typically interface with.
Okay, and give them a sound bite for what they can say to make that person just think, man, I got to talk to him. What's the sound bite that they can give that person in finance?
You want to drive your EBITDA, come talk to us.
That's a pretty great sound bite. All right, let's give it up for Chris Lee.